Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. Now, we are joined by 10th Man, Eli, Neil, Refracted Curvature, the Adam Meakin, and a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all.
Hello, hello, hello.
Good morning, all.
Good morning, everyone.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning. Let's kick off with a bit of housekeeping. Any evidence that you can acquire an elevation angle from a curved baseline?
I think, as we discussed in the pre-chat, no. Angles require two straight lines.
Any evidence of a physical geometric sphere-edge horizon formerly known as the curve of the Earth? I've said it before, and I will say it again. We do a warm-up for about half an hour to 3/4 an hour every show. You can see it. Subscribe today to my second channel, and you'll see the lengths I go to warm up my panel. Discord I gave up on years ago.
It's the silence.
I was
Got Neil with his scratchy mic straight through the top of me while I'm saying this, of course. Great
because
start
you
to the
told
show.
we tell you all the time too. It's the silence that's deafening, Nathan.
Yes, indeed.
it falls under a surplus horizon, just like a surplus dingleberry.
There's an answer I can work with. We only have one horizon, and the horizon in the begging the question, proof of nothing, perspective, hijacking, Earth, curve, calculator was geometric before it was debunked by the Black Swan. We only have one horizon. It's the horizon we use to establish horizontal with.
How'd they do that?
They can do it with a sextant. Any evidence of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety?
No measurable drift of anything happening.
Wait a second. We're moving? Hold on
No.
a second. Let me fasten myself.
The whole idea of calling it Coriolis effect is to state that the frame of reference you are experiencing is non-inertial. What does that mean? It means that from your point of view, nothing's happening, right? There is no motion. You and the platform that's claimed to be rotating or a roundabout are as one. Therefore, if you look at the ground on a roundabout as you're spinning, nothing moves. Your feet are firmly planted on the roundabout. You're not moving with relation to the roundabout. It's a non-inertial turning reference frame. Now, the reason it's described that way is because the effect you're about to describe from that reference frame is an effect that doesn't really happen. So as you turn on a reference frame that you are as one with, you see something that's not part of that, from your perspective, non-inertial turning reference frame, and you see something in an inertial reference frame. That would be to say, a ball thrown over the top of the roundabout that you are spinning on. Now, when you look from the ground at your feet firmly planted on something that definitely isn't moving, it's non-inertial. And you look up at the ball that's tossed in a straight line over the top of the roundabout. That ball is in what's known as the inertial reference frame and travels in a straight path. But because you turn underneath the ball, the path of the ball looks like it takes a curve. It doesn't really take a curve, it just looks like it curves because you observe it as you turn underneath it. Now that effect, that not actual deflection, the not really happening curve you see, is called Coriolis drift. That is what that effect is known as. The effect of you seeing something seem to curve because you turn beneath it. Now, as I stated, it's an effect that doesn't really happen, only seems to because you're turning beneath something. Now, recently, and on yesterday's after show, subscribe today to my second channel to catch the uncut and after show if you're not a member, we discussed Wolfie, who made it very explicitly clear that he and his plane had to correct for drift when discussing Coriolis effect. Now, as detailed, with a roundabout and a ball tossed over the top of it, the drift is not actually happening. The ball in my example travels straight but looks like it drifts. It doesn't actually, it just looks like it. And my concern is that there are pilots out there under the misapprehension that they need to correct for something that isn't really happening. Now, I'd like to appeal to my audience. Maybe if this is on the replay and I'm in the audience myself, I'll set a little poll. Is it a concern to you as an audience member if you got onto a plane and had a little chat with the pilot and he said, I'm going to correct for something that doesn't really happen? Would that concern you? Because it would certainly concern me, and I've already done a little questionnaire with my panel, and a couple of them agreed that that would concern me. If you're correcting for things that don't really happen, then that's going to put people's lives at risk. I think it's a very genuine concern. Unlike when you talk about Brian Mullen and going after his career simply because he's detailed how planes may or may not be affected by a turning Earth underneath them, to have Coriolis deflection be true. Now, that's nothing to do with his work. But flying a plane, on the other hand, that's definitely something that you need to get a good handle on whether or not you're going to be correcting for this not actual drift that this pilot says he's correcting for. So I may do a straw poll, I may ask the chat, maybe if I just do it with a 1. Would you, as a member of the audience, get onto a plane knowing full well that the pilot is going to be correcting for something that literally is not happening? Would you be okay with that? Press 1 if you wouldn't care that he may be moving the plane and manoeuvring the plane in reaction to something that literally isn't happening. Would that concern you? If so, press 2. If not, press 1. Tell me from the chat if that's a concern to you, getting on a plane knowing that the pilot's going to correct for something that literally doesn't happen. Let me know. Should we move on from Coriolis while we're taking a straw poll from the live audience? Any other comments on Coriolis?
I just wanted to ask one more question. So
Feel free.
then you could say that it's an optical phenomenon, right? Because it's really not curving, but it appears like it's curving, correct?
Yeah, it just looks like it's curving only from the point of view of somebody on a roundabout turning underneath. You can only observe Coriolis if you're on a non-inertial turning reference frame, like a roundabout with a ball tossed over the top, separate to the roundabout which you are part of. Observing it look like it's drifting. That's the only way to observe Coriolis effect.
I object to this whole discussion.
Why is that?
Me as well.
How will you detail Coriolis when we don't have an axis to Earth?
Oh, Coriolis is very much a real effect, John. As detailed earlier, Coriolis would be observed if you, for the sake of argument, was on a roundabout and I looked up at an aeroplane travelling in a straight line over the top of me. As I turn beneath the aeroplane, it looks like it's fucking corkscrewing, John.
Right, but the thing is, the roundabout has a measurable radial value.
Oh, yeah. No, I didn't pretend for 1 second that this was in any way relation to a turning Earth. We're not turning. We'd notice. There'd be Coriolis effect. Now, even if there was, it wouldn't be something you'd correct for in a plane because it's a not actual deflection. But Coriolis effect happens all the time. There are many, many people observing aeroplanes from non-inertial turning reference frames like roundabouts. My concern would be that one of them would get on the radio and talk to Wolfie and tell him about how he's seeing this not actual deflection, and suddenly Wolfie puts the plane into a barrel roll because he thinks he needs to account for it.
That'd be great.
Do you see my concern?
Hello, guys.
Hey, Arwin.
Oh yeah, it's a real cognitive problem if you think that the ground's turning beneath you, and you're trying to correct for it. You're going to crash the plane.
Oh, no, it's nothing to do with correcting for the Earth turning beneath. It doesn't. Coriolis is a deflection only observable from a non-inertial turning reference frame. So to correct for Coriolis, it would only be the case that somebody from the ground communicates with the air to explain that they see something seeming to drift. And then the pilot going, you're seeing not actual deflection from a non-inertial turning reference frame. That would be Coriolis drift. Oh, well, I better correct immediately. Now, Wolfie's made it explicitly clear that he thinks he has to correct for drift. He doesn't. It isn't happening. But that concerns me deeply.
But isn't the cause of Coriolis something turning underneath?
That's correct. The only reason anybody would ever communicate with ground control that they are experiencing a Coriolis effect would be if they were actually on a non-inertial turning reference frame like a roundabout, observing the aeroplane seem to do something it isn't really doing merely because they're turning beneath it. Now, obviously, Earth isn't turning, so nobody's ever going to experience a plane drifting in the air because they're turning beneath it. That wouldn't happen, and if it did, it would shorten the flight times. Obviously, anything travelling to the east would have a shortened flight time. That does not happen.
Neil
to the
deGrasse
west, my bad.
Tyson says it does.
To the west.
On screen, look.
Go on.
Coriolis force in north-south football stadiums always deflects field goals to the right, east for north kicks and west for south kicks. There's a bold claim from a high priest there. Just want to give this Bobby Powell a shout out. Neil, I have a serious question for you, sir. If football seems to deflect because of the Earth's movement, then that would mean then that the Earth and the atmosphere are separate reference frames. If that's true, then why doesn't this happen for planes, helicopters, drones, etc.? Nicely done, Bobby Powell.
Precisely. That is the very essence of the argument. If it is claimed, as it is claimed by Neil deGrasse Tyson, that from the stands observing a football, in an inertial reference frame travelling straight will seem to deflect because essentially you and the ground move beneath it. Now, from your position, watching it, it looks like it takes a curved path. It doesn't actually curve, it's the ground turning beneath it. That would be two separate reference frame and a claim of Coriolis drift. That would be you seeing the ball seem to take a curved path because Earth turned underneath, as is the claim. And as this commenter has pointed out, if Earth has two separate reference frames to cause a not actual deflection of a football as you observe it from the stand and the Earth is claimed to turn underneath, then why doesn't the Earth turn underneath aeroplanes, shortening their flight times? If it was the case that Earth turned underneath the football, it would also turn underneath the blimp filming the game and the aeroplane travelling over the stadium. And if it was travelling from Charlotte, North Carolina to Los Angeles, it would only take an hour and a half because Earth would be turning underneath it for us all to be able to look up at the plane and go, oh, look, I observe Coriolis deflection in the aeroplane. It looks like it's drifting. And the man next to you nudges you and goes, no, it's not really curving. It's us on Earth turning underneath it that's shortening that flight from 5 hours to 1.5. Said nobody ever because it doesn't happen. Earth is not turning underneath aeroplanes. And it's not turning underneath footballs either. It's just claimed to. Total nonsense. It would shorten flight times. And your hot air balloon would take off and have a different continent come to it. Because Earth would be turning underneath it. Earth doesn't turn underneath anything. Anything else on Coriolis effect? Thank you, Adam.
Have you seen this on screen? So the next one, look, this is March 2020. Funny, blah, 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 blah. Here's why. Enjoyed the Black Swan. Tales of Unara. So we think we're not getting out there. I've never heard of these people, but they're trolling Neil deGrasse Tyson with BLM, whatever, 69's Black Swan vid. Shout out.
Awesome.
Love it.
I love it. I love the fact that it hasn't been censored away from that chat thread. Brilliant.
Huh.
There was a time, Nathan, I remember that they had a lot of people believing they could see Coriolis happening right in front of their eyes.
You can. Just get on a roundabout,
But I mean-
chuck a ball over the top.